You're listening to WLPN LP Chicago, 105.5 FM, Lumpen Radio, Bridgeport. It's January 11th, 2018, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, coming to you, as always, from Studio B here at the Co-Prosperity Sphere in beautiful Bridgeport, Chicago, the community of the future, as many like to call it. I wanted to thank Lumpen for having us yet again, and I wanted to thank the fearless leader, Logan Bay, and the other leaders who have moderate amounts of fear, such as Jamie Trecker. So I wanted to thank everyone. Well, he claims he has no fear. I've seen some fear. Anyway, I wanted to thank also everyone out there listening live on WLPN 105.5 FM, and also listening live via the Lumpen app or TuneIn Radio, anything like that on a streaming service. Thank you. Might I remind you that if you are listening live, you can join the live chat over at tlk.io/WLPN and join in the conversation, which mainly revolves around poking fun of me and, if he's on, Ed as well. So you can feel free to do that if you choose, if you're listening live. If you're not listening live, if you're listening via podcast, I want to thank you as well. I like to thank everyone. You don't have to listen live. It's okay. And if you're listening for the first time, I like to give a little spiel about what this show is about. So here it goes. The goal of the show is to open up a window into how the people making, selling, marketing, and facilitating the beer, getting into your glass, feel about the topics that are a part of their everyday lives. Many of my greatest beer experiences have been talking about beer while sharing beer with people whose opinions I respect and admire, and it's these experiences that I hope to capture with the Insiders Roundtable. And I must say beforehand that all my guests' opinions are their own and don't represent any other entity that they may be affiliated with. Certainly not Lumpen Radio. Probably not the Beer Temple as well, to be honest, and let's just extend that to anything else other than their own opinions. So, with that said, I will get to my guests. My first guest is, first let me take a step back. I'm getting ahead of myself. We introduce guests in order of seniority, and that is how many times they've been on, and I think Kate Tronica, I think you are the senior most guest.
It's crazy.
Thanks for coming on.
I've done it.
Yeah. You've finally gotten there.
I've finally endured all of this.
Yeah.
In order to get here. Hi. Yeah. Hey.
What's new?
Not too much.
Thanks for coming on.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, doing good. Good.
Cool. All right. That was easy. All right. My next most senior guest is definitely not the most senior in person. Still hasn't been here in person, but he's been on quite a bit. Is Mr. Brian Roth, and I noticed a real lack of deep V's. I think our listeners would be distressed if this were a video show as well. I can actually see, and you've got basically a turtleneck on. So, but other than that,
fleece.
Yes, I'll just assume that it's laundry day, and that for you it's the reverse of everyone else, where they're left wearing only underwear. You prefer to wear underwear until you run out. So, what's up, man?
I've got a
Anything
happy
new with
cat
you?
on my lap at the moment, who may or may not chime in like the last time
Yeah.
I was on. We'll see. But no, it's been good and busy the last couple of weeks. Looking forward to a trip tomorrow to do a little beer vacation with some friends. And
Nice.
yeah.
Where are you going? Or is it a secret?
Going up to DC.
Okay. Nice. Whoops.
Yeah.
Turn that off. Well, very well. I think this is a sign. People are not really interested in talking. So this should pretend well for the rest of the show. But I think I've got an ace up my sleeve, and that's my final guest, Mr. Andrew Gill. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Chris?
Good. Good to have you back.
Yeah, I'm getting over a flu.
Oh.
But I enjoyed myself at the Beer Temple birthday party.
Yes.
Very nice.
Thanks for coming, man. And
Yeah.
sorry that I was running around like a madman.
It was a
wild
wild time.
We got caught with our pants down a little bit. We got caught out in our deep V's, so to speak, as you would say, Brian, and so often do. But yeah, it was, I would say, 2 to 3 times more crowded than we expected it to be. And I think some of that showed, but I think people still enjoyed themselves. So thanks for coming.
You
I
put
really
those
appreciate it.
you put those Omnipolo beers on like
Yeah.
half price, and
Yeah.
the crowds are going to show up. So
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah, I'd like to think it was to say thanks, but no, they wanted cheap beer.
did you see the bottle share in the shop? It was
Hard not to.
a little off the chain.
Yeah, it was a little out of control. We did kind of a debriefing the next day, and that was the number one topic. Is okay, we'll probably not do this again for a really long time. But if we do, just remember that this did not work. We have to figure out a different way to do it.
I bought a bottle of beer in the middle of that, and it was very stressful. So I would just say,
Yeah, that was the main thing. Is that like it was really difficult to actually conduct business in there.
Oh, that was going on during that. Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. The bottle share was in the bottle shop, and it was just like hordes of people. Like
Sounds like the Pipeworks Dojo every day it's open.
Okay, yeah. Well, then I should have someone from there come in and show us how it's done. But anyway, thanks for coming on, Andrew.
of course.
And glad you're starting to feel better.
oh yeah, I feel mostly better. Yeah.
Good. $5 beer will do that, so I'll take credit for that. We've got a bunch to get to, and I think Brian will be leaving us a little early, potentially today, so I'm going to try to get right into stuff, but I do want to quickly go over, see if there's anything that people have been drinking lately. There is one that I feel pretty strongly about, and that's a Rogue beer called Straight Out of Newport, and it's a West Coast IPA, and it was very surprising for a Rogue product. I was very much expecting this to taste like the 90s, maybe, as someone might say, but I mean, this tastes to me like it could have come from Pizza Port or something like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
really super bright IPA, and it's in 4-pack, 16-ounce cans. So I mean, they're coming for you, Pipeworks.
The name is a little unfortunate, the Straight Out of Newport, Oregon.
Well, and the visuals are very much of
that's
NWA.
that is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's a little,
Yes.
but it's tasty.
Yeah.
Very tasty, yeah.
Anyone else have any beers that they've been enjoying as of late?
I was really impressed with the new the Hazy Little thing by Sierra Nevada. I got a
Yeah, me
6-pack
too.
of that. It was a couple of weeks ago now, but I kind of spaced out how I was drinking the cans just to see what it would taste like. It was sitting in my fridge all the same, but just how it would taste over the course of a couple of weeks or so. And I was really impressed with it and really enjoyed it. And in terms of, it being a New England IPA, I don't think it's going to change any minds or kind of change that style at all. But it was certainly really enjoyable. And I'm really excited to see what it'll do for the company start of the year.
Agreed. I thought it was, certainly not the haziest or juiciest out there, but a very well-constructed beer and a sign of the times. The big boys are not taking long to
They're
just
with
kind
it.
of jump on what the kids are into.
Yeah, I had a beer from Folksbier recently. They're a smaller brewery in New York, and they do a lot of really nice Berliner Weisses, mostly kettle sours, but they do them really well. And they had a raspberry glow up. Small cans. They just started canning, which is exciting. Their tap room's excellent, really like warm and welcoming, and they have like really good like charcuterie and stuff there. Great people. So
Where's this at?
it's in New York, kind of not too far from Other Half actually. So,
Okay.
which I've never been to, but I hear it's nearby.
There you go.
You know, I was going to mention a beer, a similar style to
Okay.
that. So when you're talking about this raspberry Berliner Weiss, was it totally opaque, like murky?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was in Florida over the holidays, and my brother-in-law is a co-owner of this small brewery. So I can't, I'm not a journalist talking about this. But it's this brewery called Ology. It's in Tallahassee, and there's like 3 breweries in Tallahassee. And they make this Berliner Weiss called The Wall. They fruit a different combination every week. They had one that was called PBR Wall, passion fruit, blood orange, and raspberry.
Okay.
And it was pretty crazy.
So yeah, Florida has been known for this kind of regional, heavily fruited,
Right.
like Berliner Weiss thing.
And I asked him, I was like, do you guys call this a Florida Weiss? Because I've seen people talk about that, and they're like, we hate that name. We don't want
really?
to use that
Yeah.
name. So.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, fruity, slightly tart stuff is good in very hot weather.
And they
like
hit
lemonade.
Yeah.
They hit a really good level of acidity in it. It was like
Yeah.
very well integrated with the fruit tartness and not just like a ton of lactic. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, it's good.
Cool. So we can get right into it. I will mention, mainly for Brian's benefit, is that it looks like there's going to be some sort of stand-up comedic thing over in Studio A. So when you hear laughter at everything you say, it may or may not be us. But it may not be. It may not be this time, is what I'm saying. Anyway.
Your own studio audience in my head.
Exactly. So we will get right to it. It was brought up a little bit last week by Josh Noel, an article that you wrote, Brian, that has, really kind of taken on and is the talk of the town, at least here in this here town. And I wanted you to, maybe just talk a little bit about what the article was, and then we can talk about, the ensuing storm of whatever you want to call it, and just kind of take it from there. And also, I'm just curious how, once we get into it more, how you were personally dealing with this thing, because it probably wasn't too enjoyable. But anyway, off to why don't you set it up for people who may not know what the heck we're talking about.
Sure. So it was a story that collected a series of vignettes as part of a framework of a larger theme. I had started reporting previously, talking to members of the Brewers Association as well as state guilds, just to try to gauge their interest and their point of views, to get their insight around issues of diversity and inclusion, since this has been something that for almost 2 years now has been a stated priority for the BA and others even longer. And I felt that when I started speaking with individuals in the story like Dominic Cook, who's a sales rep down in Florida, who lives in a historically black neighborhood in St. Pete, about his outreach efforts to try to bridge the gap in his mind of where craft beer maybe isn't going or hasn't been before in trying to get to his neighborhoods, and talking with people like Craig Smith, who's also in Florida, a friend of Dom, who has worked in the industry and acts as a consultant, and his perspectives about topics of diversity, and speaking with Carla Lauder, who has been active in trying to raise awareness toward labels and beer names and how they may impact and affect potential customers in the community. And I think together these aspects started to build a framework that was showing common denominators that were top of mind for the people who were living and talking and in business, thinking about this topic. And so I started to piece that story together as something to try to highlight kind of where minds were at this moment in time, as it's a clear priority for the Brewers Association as they have their own diversity committee that is exploring ways that can better suit and improve things within the industry and for people who work in the industry. And especially just it being kind of top of mind socially and culturally as well.
Yeah, absolutely there. And then it seemed like pretty shortly after there was some blowback, pushback, stuff like that was pretty significant, and it's kind of taken on its own life from there, and a lot of stuff was called into question. And for a while, you were pretty quiet about it. So I'm glad that you're on here to kind of talk through some of this stuff. And Andrew and Kate, obviously feel free to just kind of jump in. And I know, we'll get to that in a moment. But so it sounds to you like, I know that in your blog, you've your personal blog, This Is Why I'm Drunk, you have talked about the BA and diversity issues and stuff for a little while. You've had articles like this before. So do you see this as like a continuation of something that you were trying to address? Was this something that you were just kind of following up on and that you wanted to look at what the BA was doing, or is this something that you found kind of personally problematic, or
So I've also written about it for All About Beer in Beer Advocate as well in 2017.
Sure, yeah.
Aspects of this. And so, looking at it from the perspective of something that not only has been stated as important by people within the industry, but I think, again, looking at it through a social and cultural lens, important topics, and even one of economics. And that was a theme that continually came up both in the story that I wrote for Good Beer Hunting as well as a previous story that I'd written for All About Beer, that essentially painted the picture through the voices of historians, marketers, industry pros, drinkers and enthusiasts, showcasing the idea that if it's a time where craft beer finds it important to talk about ways that it should grow and can grow and increase market share, then making sure that on a holistic level, that the way that they approach and think about all of the communities that they may have the potential to interact with is something that's necessary. And that's something that Scott Metzger and Kevin Blodger, who both serve on the BA's Diversity Committee, Scott is the chair, stated explicitly and specifically in the Good Beer Hunting article that in order to best serve the future of craft beer and grow craft beer, then we need to not only look at the potential and the impact when it comes to gender identity or race and ethnicity, but also economics and access.
Sure, yeah. That craft beer should be something that is that everyone kind of feels is open to them to try.
Yeah, absolutely. This was, I don't know if, Brian, you and I were on the same show when this, I don't know. I was discussing this at some point. I think it was when we were originally discussing sort of sexist beer labels or imagery that was potentially offensive to women. One of the things that I was saying was just, I don't understand a motivation to put something that would potentially turn off an entire consumer base on your product. And like, why would you make that move? And there's the move to expand craft beer to other markets is definitely something that's been happening from, yes, a total economic perspective. So reaching out to women, being more inclusive to women, that is definite women and, it's historically kind of been a white male consumer base. So branching out from that in all ways.
And it sounds to me like sometimes a good way that people are saying to be inclusive is by not being exclusive. I mean, obviously, if you have a demographic that loves your product and you obviously are going to focus on them, but that doesn't need to be to the exclusion of anyone else, which I think is what. So there was like kind of two different parts to me, it seemed, to the article. There was one that was definitely about like more of a racial component, the St. Pete's, socioeconomic, and the fact that there was was he a wholesaler down there?
Sorry.
What's up? No, go on.
No. What Brian was probably just about to respond. Go ahead.
I was Dom. He works for a distributor.
Yeah, and was just really having trouble getting any traction with craft beer wholesalers and suppliers. Right? They didn't seem to be interested in talking.
His story was just fascinating, and he didn't drink before he found the story of Arthur Guinness, and he was he had a son who had died just recently, and he was trying to find a way to feel inspired, plain and simple. And so he found this book about Arthur Guinness, and it kind of piqued his interest. He had never thought about beer before, and he found Guinness, and that led him to Sam Adams, and he just kind of started down this path, picking up books, Oxford Companion, Radical Brewing, and he found a love for beer. And when he moved to Florida with the idea of trying to find a job in the industry, he noticed that the people around him that he spent his time with did not know about craft beer. And this is something that I really appreciate. He's very active on Twitter, and he shares this all the time, where he'll interact with people and find new friends who don't know what Yuengling or Sam Adams is, or what craft beer is. And so he's working, handing out bottles of New Belgium or Rodenbach to just show that there are experiences that people might not know about. And his perspective is essentially that whatever you can do to get somebody a bottle or a can of full flavored beer that isn't going to be just some general macro lager or malt liquor, that's going to help push the needle for everybody. Totally. And so he's got this wonderful outlook that I think has been, really kind of the epitome of where these conversations have been. That he's looking at this at the big picture and is really enthusiastic about just getting anybody to talk about any aspect of craft beer.
Yeah, that was a really excellent, I was glad that you brought his story to attention, and that was a really enjoyable part of that piece. I think most people's issue with the piece as a whole was sort of in a lot of people's minds, the framing of that story within the rest of the frame of the story. So there was also an element of the piece that conflated Instagram accounts. And Brian, I don't mean to say what your story is, so you can jump in anytime. That was something that wasn't addressed in the synopsis.
That's what I was going to get to that the other part of it that I saw.
That was what people were upset about. It had nothing to do with that. The overall content of the piece was I think really enjoyable and needed and appreciated. I think it was just the framing within that people took.
So then,
so it was the lead too of the story and the headline. So the Instagram accounts.
Yeah. So then that was the other part, was that there are these Instagram accounts, these almost secondary or internal, well, not totally internal, but pseudo-internal Instagram accounts associated with breweries and used by members of the brewery that I think were deemed by the article to be, misogynistic and potentially isolating of and being exclusive to people. And I think that's really where people it's definitely where people had issues. So I wanted to get what the whole article was about, and just first and foremost, and then start talking about the other part.
So I'm curious, Brian. I would just love to hear what the workflow was on writing that article. So you mentioned you were writing about the BA and their diversity committee, and writing about all these other elements that were kind of further down in the article. How does it work when you're writing for Good Beer Hunting? Did you bring a finished article to them, or did you collaborate with an editor? How did that work?
So my editor is Austin Elleray. And so in terms of writing the piece, it was a case where I had done some previous reporting already, talking with members of the BA and state guilds. And when colleagues across the industry in a couple different places had mentioned these accounts to me, I was curious to find out more. And so when I saw these pages that were public, but meant to be kind of just a brewery to brewery thing, a way to build camaraderie and friendship, and also show kind of the nuts and bolts of what happens behind the scenes. There were a few that seemed to provide some provocative content that, while is not stated one way or the other in the piece that it would be racist or misogynistic or bigoted, the context of it may be, and putting it in the framework of the way that the industry interacts and engages with each other on these topics, it seemed like a way to try to show that even as we're having these conversations, there are still some cultural and social aspects that are beholden to the history of beer in America. And so as we have these conversations, it's important to realize kind of all of the aspects of what may or may not be off-putting to people who are potential customers. And we see that, and this is also borne out in the story through things said by Ron Fulmer from Arizona, Tom Weisenheld from Minnesota, Scott again, and Kevin from the Brewers Association. And so in constructing the story, this was another piece to show how these aspects come together as a way to build a more fuller picture.
So we're going to take 90 seconds here to listen to some of the other stuff that WLPN has to offer, and then we'll come back and talk more about this on the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. Welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, and I am joined by my guests, Brian Roth, Kate Brankin, and Andrew Gill. We are talking about an article on the Good Beer Hunting website. It was written by Brian Roth and kind of stoked some or produced some ire, and we were just kind of figuring out what the intent was and kind of what the backstory to the article was, and then we're getting into why it really kind of ruffled a lot of feathers. And one of the things that, and mainly it was these inside, these boys, as they're called, accounts on Instagram. And, one of the questions I have, and if you guys want to go in a different direction, just jump in, is, we're trying to shine, or the intention of the article seemed to be to shine a light on inequality and how it could be exclusive of certain groups of people. Why did you focus, and lead the article, I guess, which is fair to say, with these like tiny obscure Instagram accounts, some of which had been defunct for a while?
I feel like there's so many examples of just the industry being exclusive.
And that was also one of the reactions that I heard. I was on the Pink Boots Society, I think it's called.
Yeah.
It's like a women in brewing a membership. I was just on the Facebook group, and there's 2,000 members or so, and just the general tone there, and for whatever reason, was that this is an issue. It's an important issue. Why the heck is this kind of the thrust of what's going on? This is kind of how I interpreted it.
I think it is. I mean, it is interesting in my opinion that this is only now sort of something that is being addressed from a moral standpoint, or from an idea of sharing the culture and not expanding the as Brian put it earlier, like the economic purchasing potential of craft beer as an industry, or as a market. So now we're seeing people reaching out in ways that just wasn't there before. And I think the net result is going to be positive. More people are going to get involved. We're going to have new voices in the industry, and it's going to be really, hopefully, excellent. That's my hope. My fear is that if we don't go about this thoughtfully and correctly and ethically, then we're going to maybe have a negative effect before we have a positive one. So
let's. You also kind of on social media had some comments
I learned
about
Twitter.
Yes, you learned to Twitter about a case, which is also part of it. I mean,
there
were other articles about this article, and you were screen capped in one of them, and so I think that you've kind of been enveloped in some of this
stressful.
as well.
It's actually been really stressful and
I'm
really
sorry about
anxiety
that.
inducing. Well, it is, in general, when you speak up in any way, and I'm sure Brian deals with this constantly when he's publishing his articles, or anybody does, just for when they're speaking their mind, it's always scary. Like, I'm sure, Andrew, you've experienced it in the same way, and Chris, every time when you host the podcast, I'm sure you do. Yep. Whenever you put yourself out there, it's anxiety inducing. But
so what were your issues that with this article?
Well,
if it seems like you
Brian,
agree with the general thrust,
I think that the general statement of that we need more women and we need more people of color in this industry is absolute. We definitely do, and I couldn't agree with that more. And in my own ways, I'm actively trying to encourage that completely. I guess, Brian, just a general question. Was there a reason why you chose Good Beer Hunting to publish this article? You've published at other places. Was it because you had worked with Austin as an editor to develop this story? Or was there a reason that you felt that this would be the best forum to publish this piece?
So I've worked with Good Beer Hunting for about a little over a year, I guess. And my relationship with other publications goes back a little further too. But in terms of developing the story, that it was me. It was on my own. I had started it a while ago, just trying to piece things together. And there are other aspects, like, for example, in the story, I cite a research study that was published in the 2017 book focusing on the impact of breweries in American neighborhoods. So that's something that I found interesting and did work trying to read it and stow it away. And so little pieces here or there. In creating the story, that was a process where, I wrote it and I went through the editing process with Austin. And that, I don't know if there's anything much more to it than that.
I mean, my experience trying to get pitches accepted with beer publications is that articles like this are hard to get editors to go for, right? So I don't know if Good Beer Hunting was more eager than other outlets might have been to publish this article. But did you shop it to anybody else, or? So, I mean,
I will say that I am thankful and lucky that, I've worked with a few different publications for, a year and a half or more. And with the editors that I've worked with, this goes for, All About Beer and Beer Advocate as well. I really appreciate the trust that they've put in me in terms of writing for that publication. And so I don't know if don't think that there was anything ulterior in terms of the location. I appreciate, of course, kind of the ability to tell stories, of which I've done before with Good Beer Hunting. I was really excited, for example, to be able to write a really long piece about kind of the business of IPA and how that's impacted both drinkers and brewers. And that was long and kind of winded, and it was really nice, and I think it was also very educational. And so,
Yeah, it definitely was.
In terms of the platform, I don't know if I could really add anything aside from the fact
I guess the
that
only
I had a good experience with Austin.
Sure, and the content that you do for them is, for the most part, really. I mean, yeah, I've always enjoyed it. I guess I've talked about it. I guess the reason why I asked about this specific piece and this specific method of publishing is because it is kind of interesting to choose Good Beer Hunting. Just, as I pointed out, they do have a history of exclusivity, especially of women in the industry. That has changed in the last couple of years, but historically, since I've been working in this industry, it has not been the case. And there's also the instant or the reality that they do have clients. So it's not like a completely level playing field. It's not like you're going to just like a journal or a online blog or to publish this. So I was wondering if there was something that you gained from going to Good Beer Hunting that would encourage you to do that instead of something that was more open and, maybe to better serve the piece as a whole.
And I'll piggyback on that before you answer, Ryan, because that is one of those things that I noticed in the responses, and then there was counter responses, and this thing kind of took on its own life. But one of the things that I did notice was a lot of questions that I didn't see answers to. Maybe they were answered as to who was put in the article, who wasn't put in the article, why weren't certain people put in the article. I know that Phil Weimar, who was quoted in the article, mentioned. I think somewhere, maybe on Twitter or to Good Beer Hunting or something like that, that there are these Instagram boys accounts run by people who are affiliated or are clients of Good Beer Hunting. And why were they contacted? Is there a reason they weren't put up on there as well? I did notice that one of them is a client of Good Beer Hunting is now deleted. Yeah. So it's all these things, whether it's well-intentioned or not, I think are causing a lot of questions as to why.
I guess I hate to see any piece that talks about inclusivity and bringing more women and more people of color into this industry compromised by the platform on which it's published. So I was hoping that there would kind of be a...
So there's a lot there now. It's several things. And let's all pile on. Yeah.
We should just be clear for listeners who might not be aware, because I was talking about this before I came on with some colleagues in the newsroom. And at
WBEZ here.
Yeah, the public radio station here where I work for my day job. And, they had no idea that Good Beer Hunting does consulting or does branding work. They thought it was a purely journalistic enterprise. So a lot of people might not even know. A lot of people who visit the site may have no idea. So just to be on the record, that is their main business, is consulting, design, marketing, and then prestige journalism on the side, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know what prestige journalism is,
fancy.
but it sounds very fancy.
Long form.
No journalism is prestigious.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I mean the bulk of what that company as a whole brings in revenue is from beer consulting, which has been stated by them. They're the ones who have come out and said that.
And it's I don't need to keep
we should let Brian talk.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I don't know if there's anything that you want, if you could
Brian, we
remember.
need like
yeah.
a visual representation of you right here, so I can. Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah.
So I
Try to
can
turn this.
answer that.
Yeah.
I think let me know if it's a case if this does it. I guess. So in my experience with Good Beer Hunting, as well as I've also done work with October, which I've done work with October through Eno Saris, who's the editor there, and. October, as you guys certainly know, and I'm sure, Chris, some of your listeners know, received some startup capital from ZX Ventures, which is owned by AB InBev. But in both of those examples, never once was I ever asked to alter any of my writing or speak or not speak to anybody in particular. And again, this gets back to I have been very lucky to work with people who have trust in me to write a story and not consider or worry about the extra parts of it. And so this story and others, there was no direct influence or questions about what should or should not be included in terms of any connection to editorial stuff.
Now, do you feel that knowing yourself the background and where the money comes from, that there should be disclaimers as to what, because whether there is or not, I mean, we're just going to take your word for it. And I do believe you, Brian, but I mean, the reality of it is there are a lot of potential, there's a lot of area for conflict. And by not addressing it at all, it seems to weaken the overall argument to me, or that's what I keep hearing. So, and that's what I believe as well.
Yeah.
I will say that I appreciate that feedback that I'm hearing now from you, and I've heard from others. And part of kind of going through the writing process of this story and talking to people in the industry and out of the industry, my wife, my friends here in North Carolina, that I think, the issues that came up, whether or not related to Good Beer Hunting or Instagram, were kind of secondary to being interested in the broader ideas of the story and the characters as they were that were a part of it, and the way that they're trying to work to enhance and benefit the industry. And this is coming again from people in the industry, outside the industry, bottle shop owners, brewers, friends. And I've really appreciated the conversation, the way both good and bad, those who have been happy and angry. I welcome that feedback, and I think these are good conversations to have.
What's the advantage for you to publish this article on Good Beer Hunting versus All About Beer?
I don't know if knowing
that the credibility is undermined
I haven't
immediately.
done something with All About Beer for a little while, and there wasn't anything in terms of extra perspective or anything kind of behind the scenes in terms of choosing to publish with Good Beer Hunting, aside from the fact that I've had a good relationship with Austin, and I think that he's helped make me a good writer.
After the article was published, I was immediately, I tweeted out that, Good Beer Hunting had held I think I said a literal boys club by inviting, just men in the industry on this camping trip for years. And I've had other women brewers. I remember when it would always happen, and it would be they would come up to me yeah, isn't this ridiculous? And I'd be yeah, it is ridiculous, but what are you going to say? Because at the time it was, a pretty formidable industry publication, and there was kind of this infamous thing of if you said anything against it, you could be thrown out into the public sector and immediately kind of combated by Good Beer Hunting, which at the time was exclusively Michael Kaiser, and I believe is now still, though I'm not sure 100%, who responds as Good Beer Hunting on Twitter. if that is him, but I would assume it is.
Well, he also is involved in this article because he added like a preamble to it or something.
Right, which was just doesn't fit with any journalistic practice I've ever heard of. If the editor needed to add a note, the editor would add it. You know? But the founder of the consulting firm that published the article wrote a note. It doesn't make sense to me.
What would be in your experience for WBEZ? What would be like the reasons that someone for a consulting firm would do that?
Yeah, we don't have consultant firms.
Yeah, okay. That are trying to publish as journalists? Is that what you're saying?
No, we don't, yeah.
It doesn't exist. That's interesting.
We actually had an hour-long meeting today about how to handle corrections and updates to stories, and there's a very specific way to do it. It would never be like what's on your article right now, Brian.
Which is unfortunate because I do agree that the tone and the goal is to bring in more, like we said, more inclusivity, and for it to then be tacked on with, oh, well, we took this misstep here, we took this misstep here, this was here, we didn't intend to do this, or we reached out to these people, but we meant to reach out to these people, but we didn't reach out to these people, it undermines the goal, which sucks for, yeah.
The thing I've heard from Kaiser for years is that Austin edits all the articles. I don't, there's a firewall between the marketing and the journalism.
And yet
and then
the responder
he jumps in immediately and adds a note.
Yes,
it doesn't make sense.
And so adds a note and then also is responding as the firm, as the consulting firm to people who are bringing up maybe discrepancies.
So let's ask the writer. Do you think that it helps or does it hurt that he's stepping in and adding to your article, Brian? Do you feel one way or another about that?
I don't know if there's a full way to. Well, it's a case where him adding that note, I think this is my perspective in not knowing the behind the scenes, and Michael can certainly answer questions on his own.
No, I was just asking for your opinion of this.
I understand the goal in terms of trying to provide additional context. I don't know if I would condone or commend one way or the other. My perspective and my hope, and I appreciate the way talking about it in terms of kind of the theme was important, and if that's something that kind of takes away from a little of it, then so be it. But my hope would be that the story still stands on its own in terms of kind of the voices that you hear and what was there and what you might learn or take away from it.
Was he involved in the article before that disclaimer, though?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. And has the article been edited at all since it was put up? Just out of curiosity.
I know that there was the addition, obviously, of the editor's note, and there were the subheads were added as well.
Right. Yeah, the subheads are added. I did notice that.
I didn't see that.
Okay.
Well, and I think what also has been interesting about this was, we've been talking about inclusivity and creating more open communication and better communication within the industry. And since, all I really did was just highlight the historical exclusivity and sexism of Good Beer Hunting. And that then had so many people then have reached out to me, people I don't know. And also, I don't know any of these brewers. I don't know the people that were mentioned in Brian's article personally at all. But it just seemed – well, actually, I take that back. I know a few people at Half Acre that were mentioned or that were part of that.
The Instagram accounts, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't know they were behind it, but now I do. And so a few people have reached out and just said, it's incredible to see that people are now sort of feeling like they can talk about how there's been this sort of inability to dissent against the points that are made in Good Beer Hunting because they it's not really a discussion. It's like whenever it's constantly reframed and redeleted or deleted and then or edited.
The entire story was deleted from Facebook and then reposted because the comments.
Internet trolls are weird,
getting
you
at
know.
it.
That's
Yeah.
like that's like a real thing, and
Oh
like
yeah,
those people
I didn't
do
see
muddle.
it. To be fair, I didn't see.
I personally made a mistake recently of retweeting someone who was, you know, trolling me after bringing these things up, and that was a total mistake. I admit it. I was sitting at
Yeah.
an airport bar, I was drinking a Guinness, and I retweeted this guy and was like,
Yeah.
"Oh yikes, this guy! Oh god!" And that was a mistake because
You fed the trolls.
I fed the troll, and it's hard. So I understand the desire to delete and recontextualize, but I
Yeah.
don't think that that's helpful moving forward. I think we need like a better. It's unfortunate that we've also recently had like, you know, Chicagoist and DNA Info are no longer.
Well, I think a fair question to ask then is, you know, should this be held up to journalistic standards? Is
think
this
that's
should we
absolute-
consider this journalism?
I actually think that is the conversation.
Okay, yeah. I mean, what do you think, Brian? I think some of the feedback is that it's posing as journalism but isn't holding up to the standards of it, so it needs to kind of be one or the other. How do you feel personally?
And I
Oh,
mean,
sorry.
I should point out too, before you respond, Brian. I mean, as the president of the North American Beer Writers Guild,
Oh, yeah.
you should probably be the forerunner on what beer writing ethics should be, right? So you lending your byline to Good Beer Hunting legitimates them in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
But maybe they should be legitimized. Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
they
right,
should.
exactly.
Maybe they
right,
should.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a nice compliment, and I hope that my byline carries
heavy
it
lifter.
carries that kind of weight. Thank you. Is it journalism? So I would say yes. For all the discussions that have been had, not once has anybody ever tried to say that something has been inaccurate or untrue. And in reporting and talking to people and using their voices and their experiences to tell the story, I think certainly showcases that kind of narrative style of writing. I guess it's a case where I might be confused as to areas about why this would be more of an op-ed than reporting in journalism.
I mean,
Andrew?
the word count, first of all, you know,
No.
the term prestige journalism that I threw out there, you know, it's like the
What is
things,
that?
it's long form, you know, writing that you find on, you know,
The New Yorker or something.
Grantland or
Yeah,
something.
Grantland,
Yeah, you know, like rest in peace. But you know, these long form articles that are top 2,000 words that, you know, often, you know, if you're a freelance writer, that's what you get paid big bucks for, you know, like that's how you make your money. And that's what Good Beer Hunting publishes often, you know, and it's the longest articles you'll find on beer that get that insider and that, you know, granular in topics. And to me, when you publish in that way and you have customized graphics, you know, illustrations that are like done all throughout, it's got the long, you know, the long read layout, that telegraphs a certain level of journalistic, you know, ethics and journalistic sort of practice that you've gone through all these processes that would happen at GQ or Esquire.
For example, like
Where you've got, you know, editors that you've had multiple rounds of edits. You've had, you know, not only copy edits, but you've had structural edits, you know, narrative flow. You've had somebody check to make sure that all of your, you know, facts are correct, fact checking.
this is interesting because I'm learning here right now about this, and it makes sense now why Chris Furnari and Josh Noel last week said to them they personally felt it was a failure of editing. And I also heard from another beer writer who reached out to me, but I didn't specifically ask if I could name them, so I won't. Independent of those two, also was very curious about editing, and I think my idea of editing was very different, but now I guess it makes more sense.
That, I mean, my wife is a magazine editor too, and she does this stuff all day. So that was the first thing that jumped out to me is having read Brian's articles elsewhere. They usually read a lot better than this article, and I felt like maybe this read more like a first draft or something.
Would disclosure of the potential for selective narration be part of it? Even though Brian didn't.
Well, I mean, the Good Beer Hunting conflict of interest. I first talked about that like 4.5 years ago.
Yeah,
and
I mean, a lot of people have been talking about it for.
I was browbeaten
forever.
for a day by Michael.
Well,
Kaiser
yeah,
on
and let's
Twitter,
also
so.
Exactly.
let's,
Well, that's what I was talking about. How people are,
and we
like,
should be fair.
afraid
That
and
Andrew has
discouraged.
been in combative social media
Yeah.
with Michael Kaiser. I certainly have
Sure.
as well. So, I mean, I think we should at least, this is not journalism, by the way, but I will disclose that. I think people out there should know that we've had kind of combative relationships in the past with him.
Yeah, and I just think, I mean, my advice to him, free advice for you, Kaiser, just split off and name it something different, and you'd be fine.
Yeah.
Or you'd be a lot better
because
off.
the content for the most part is good. I just think that when we're now discussing, we're not just doing beer reviews anymore. When we're discussing, oh, sorry. What's up?
No, go.
Oh, okay.
Go on.
Sorry, there was like a lot of flailing you just
No,
did
I was
for a
just trying
second.
to show Brian something.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, not
yeah.
just
Funny
beer
visuals.
reviews.
When you're not doing just beer reviews anymore, when you're not doing just branding advice, when you're not talking about things that are kind of surface level, once we're getting into the actual hey, we're talking about people's livelihoods and how their behavior is affecting the industry at large, we need to do a really good job of doing all we can to give those arguments the benefit of the doubt and make sure that they're on a completely good platform for that.
Well, no good deed goes unpunished, Brian. I think, I mean, I think we all genuinely agree that your intention is sound here.
Absolutely
I just want to restate
on board
that.
with
Yes,
all of
I
it,
would
yeah.
Yes.
love if we don't have any more beers
Yes.
called Panty Dropper. I would love that.
Yes. So I want to all restate
why
that
are
we're
there
all
two?
kind of on the same page. I mean, we're all on the same team here, all
Completely,
four of
yeah.
us. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I know, well, first I want to mention that you're listening to 105.5 FM, Chicago, WLPN LP. And I know Brian has a whole bunch of stuff to do, so he may have to cut out early. But I wanted to talk to Brian just a little bit more. Is there anything else you wanted to say? We've been talking about this quite a bit. Is there anything else you wanted to say about the this article or anything that you?
Yeah,
I don't
Brian
know.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, what are we? Are we missing something?
I think one of the most valuable things that has come from this experience, both in terms of reporting and writing the piece, as well as interacting with people afterward, and this is honest and sincere, is I value the feedback that people are giving me, and I like having conversations, good and bad, and difficult and easy, because this speaks, one, to the effort and the theme of the story, that this is kind of, it should be a little difficult to get from point A to point B, but people care. And I appreciate that people care, and I like that people care. And so thank you to you guys for having this conversation with me and lending your voice and listening to me and letting me listen to you.
Anything else?
To you.
Yeah. Anything else?
Seriously.
Guys, it's I think it's about time that we took a break. I want to thank Brian. I know it's
Brian
probably not the easiest conversation to sit down and have, but you've been on in the past, and I wanted to have you on again, and I hope to have you on again in the future. But for real, unacceptable, this fleece thing. Not cool. I'm not even kidding. I'm genuinely
Is this
very angry.
The Beer Temple Boys talk?
Yeah, exactly. So we are going to take a little bit of a break, and then we'll come back. I'm not sure which of us will be here or not, and we're going to talk about other stuff when we come back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable.
If you like to gamble, I tell you I'm your man. You win some, lose some, it's all the same to me.
Welcome back to Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn. I am joined by my guests, Kate Branken and Andrew Gill. Brian Roth had to go get some sleep and hopefully do some laundry. So during the break, producer Jamie and station master Jamie was talking to us about some things and some clarifications he had, and was just curious why an article that we all believed the intention behind and the topic we all agreed with. Okay, it was poorly edited. Why are you kind of jumping all over this thing and not really realizing that it was how the platform really affected this sort of thing. So we figured we would talk a little bit more about it. I also know, Kate, that maybe you had some other stuff that you wanted to talk about that maybe Brian wouldn't necessarily need to be here for. Plus, now we can really slam Brian without him.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Kidding, Brian.
But so yeah. I mean, I guess it is some of the issues I guess we have is with the the makeup of the site, and also the just how its existence out there, how it interacts.
What Jamie was saying during the break was like, I mean, this guy brings up good points. Like, why are you guys upset about this guy bringing up good points? And it is not one of the points that Brian did bring up is that there are secondary, private, but also public, or personal Instagram accounts that kind of have like more sophomoric, frat boy, kind of like pretty much just like bad satire at the worst jokes.
Yeah.
To me, like they're basically ways for the brewery staff to blow off steam. It seems. Making
but even
jokes,
that,
right?
It's inside jokes, but a lot of it is kind of like jokes about jokes,
like sexual jokes.
Yeah, sexual jokes, and I don't know what can you say on this radio station.
If it can be said on The Simpsons, you can say it here. That's what Jamie told me once.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Cowabunga.
Yeah, exactly. Eat my shorts.
I've never seen The Simpsons.
Yeah.
What is this show you speak of? No big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think and what we were talking about during the break was just though that does need to end. Like that type of sort of it's not really funny. It's not really adding and but
what needs to end?
Well, that type of
what type of? I'm genuinely not sure what exactly you're saying needs to end.
Well, what Brian was saying is that the sort of like bad satire, bad humor, kind of frat boy, bro-y jokes do dissuade people from thinking that this is as inclusive as an exclusive. Do things, you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah, that it is a welcoming industry. That like women would see those accounts and be like, I don't want to work there. Like I avoided frats when I was in college, and I'm not going to go start working one now as an adult. Like,
and can I play just devil's advocate a little bit? Like, what if the culture at that brewery is frat boy-y? I mean, there's plenty of frat boy bars. Those can exist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do frat boy bars have to stop existing? I don't know. I maybe I'm conflating things.
Right,
I don't know.
I mean, if that's
if one of the breweries has one of these things and it's frat boy, that doesn't mean that somebody else's is. I mean, one of the ones mentioned in the articles was the HA Fat Boys, and that's the Half Acre or has people from Half Acre who control it, and it's them eating sandwiches and stuff. I don't know. I've only seen a few posts of it,
like
but
pretty innocuous. I mean, that's not really a offensive situation, and so that kind of, what Brian was bringing up was just that there's sort of like an interconnection between all of those accounts, and I mean,
like they follow each other and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, who doesn't? I mean, I follow Brian, and Brian follows me, and we don't know each other, and
Right.
yet we have conversations. So it's just kind of like the content of that needs to be. Breweries really need to remember
I
that.
follow Donald Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Companies really need to remember that they are being represented by their staff at all times, which is dangerous and scary in this public age.
Yeah, I think that would totally. And I think, some of these people, if maybe they just need to stand up and say, yeah, that is us. That is how we are. We're not offended by it. I'm sorry if you are, but that's just what we're doing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I follow this off-color account that's like the Rat Pack or something, and I had no idea that there were other ones that were offensive, because Off-Color is a brewery that like has a culture that like respects women,
Oh, totally.
and so
Yeah.
they would never have anything
So
like
does
that
Half
occur.
Acre, yeah.
Right, yeah. So the breweries that I'm attracted to already police themselves pretty well on this, and so I didn't even know it was a problem, And maybe that's part of Brian's point, is to show that some of these respected good guys of brewing were also complicit in this sort of like totally off-brand.
And maybe they were unaware
activity.
that they were, creating an image that was exclusionary.
Well, they were certainly vulgar and sexual, a lot of them, even if some of them weren't overtly trying to be exclusive or misogynist or
Yeah.
racist or anything like
And
that.
in no way am I trying to defend that or
Oh,
anything.
no,
I'm just
I'm
trying
not
to
saying
say
you are,
that
yeah.
if we are, I guess the points that I was trying to make are, if we are going to call out that type of stuff and move forward collectively as an industry, like away from that kind of from the initial the initial platform that like Budweiser and Macro Brewery set up of like hot babe in a tank top pouring like beer on her
Bathing
chest,
suit.
then we need to like kind of be very hyper aware because no one has a marketing team, no one has these things to really help them police themselves.
To me, part of the problem with using all these as an example, though, was that I didn't think this was indicative of beer culture. It was just indicative of like dudes that they could have been a restaurant that had this account. It could have been a frat. It could have been any number of places where like a softball team, or like,
Yeah.
it didn't seem like beer was essential to this offensive activity.
No, but I think that almost doesn't matter because there was some affiliation to the breweries, even if it was to the businesses, even if it was, loose and personal to public accounts, or they were not like official accounts. So I guess, the idea is just that, in this age of Instagram, you kind of got to be careful about, people making these assumptions and people like Brian making these conflations because it can be done.
And so we're sitting here talking still about the first big topic of the show, which is an article that Brian Roth wrote for Good Beer Hunting about I guess inequality and exclusionary practices or cultures rather in beer. Brian has since had to go to sleep, but we're continuing it, especially
He's listening to us to fall asleep
yes,
right now.
Exactly. Well, not too hard. And then our producer at the break kind of had some questions for us that we thought were legit and wanted to continue on. And one of them was that seems to be maybe we didn't hit home enough because maybe we just assume that people listening may know, but probably don't, was the platform. I think a lot of people found it problematic and potentially undermining of something that they maybe really felt strongly about. And I know that's I think one of the things that was also a concern of you, Kate, and Andrew as well, and a whole bunch of people. Now, Kate, was there anything in particular that you wanted to also discuss before I kind of went over a few things. There was some stuff that you said you wanted to talk about. Is that what we just hit on before?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I guess, yeah, just the way that this is an important subject, and this is something that I personally feel really passionate about. Bringing more, women into the industry has been something I've really been trying to help foster. So for it to be published on Good Beer Hunting, an article kind of, slamming these things was a little weird. And to be fair, they have made some major changes in the last 2 years, 3 years, 2.5 years maybe, to be more inclusive on their blog, on their content
Stories. I
yeah,
don't know.
Blog. I
yeah,
don't
on their
know.
blog. But I mean, you do need to take into consideration that essentially like a marketing company, someone who gives brand advice, someone who has clients in the industry is now pushing for these things.
Yeah, and even as much as in the article, I mean, one of the few breweries, I think there was 2 breweries maybe that were brought up in specifically positive lights that I'm remembering. One of them was New Belgium, and there had banner ads, top and bottom and even in the middle, I think, of the article. So things like that. I mean, it could have been just
Yeah, which
happenstance.
as Brian said, he was never asked to change anything, and I can definitely see that. As a writer, I would have gone to New Belgium as an example of
Maybe change that though.
Yeah, sure. But then I noticed also, I looked at the Good Beer Hunting site today, and they've published 2 or 3 other articles on this topic since that one came out.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, like
One,
3.
yeah, one was by the former head of HR at New Belgium, which was basically wasn't a very good article.
and New Belgium is a client of Good Beer Hunting.
Which there was a
So for them to then have a retraction to their own story is, you're saying, a conflict of interest.
Well, they
Sorry, I don't mean to say that.
No, they published, and the next post, or the post right before this, was like, New Belgium is a new major sponsor of Good Beer Hunting. We did we did branding work for them last year, redoing their sour labeling and stuff like that. And now they're going to be a big sponsor of ours. They're going to have some columns about sour beer that will be clearly labeled as branded, sponsored by New Belgium.
Yeah.
But then the next post was by a woman who had worked in HR at New Belgium for 12 years about, the same kind of topic.
Defending the article, or what was?
It wasn't even talking about the article. It was
Okay.
it was HR speak about how inclusivity is important and how employee-owned companies may not necessarily be insulated against harassment just by the
Good
fact
topic,
that
but
they're but written by the
Yes.
sponsor's old HR person.
I can see definitely like a conflict of interest in that, just from someone who's trying to then defend their ability to make these claims to then have again their clients come and do that.
Yeah, and that was another thing that I was curious about was there was a gentleman, Scott Metzger, who I think Brian talked about when he was here, and is mentioned all throughout the article. I'm not sure, but I believe that he may also be a member of the Fervent Few. Is that disclosed or?
Which the Fervent Few is this paid
Yes.
club that you can join where you get
Is it,
access
no.
to the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's any gender identity
Yeah,
is welcome,
Yeah.
I believe. But
And I may be wrong, and if I'm wrong about that, I will correct myself.
That
But
speaks to the underlying problem that Good Beer Hunting just needs to decide what they are and be that.
It'd be amazing.
like the fact that you can have a paid membership club. That's also it's so much
so
of
many conflicts of
everything,
interest.
and
So
then
many
it's
different things,
Well, it's just so
yeah.
many different things, and it's also on top of these long reads. There's also breaking news stories, and also
and some of those are paid spots.
Yeah,
like you
right.
could pay to be in the hype thing or whatever.
Right.
And they do claim that they make a clear distinction, and they've published breakdowns and kind of in like a very cheeky way.
Right.
They've made, clothing that even says sponsored content to
Right.
like make fun of basically people,
Asking the question.
like Andrew, you and me, myself, making fun of people who are bringing up the fact that we want better ethics in industry journalism. And I don't know. I mean, I don't think that's a crazy thing to ask for.
No,
I think
it's
that
not.
people who care about this industry, people who care about small businesses, people who care about the people who are employing a lot of people, we want to make sure that the word does get out, and it gets out ethically and appropriately and in a fair way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's the funny thing for me is just how many questions just come up when reading this stuff, because they kind of dip their toes in so many things. And I guess everyone's got to kind of pay the bills, but I was just thinking about some relationships that Good Beer Hunting has with some breweries in St. Louis. I mean, obviously ABI, InBev is a big one that Good Beer Hunting has worked with. But I don't know. Then I'm starting to think well, have they worked with Four Hands? I know Four Hands was at Wandawega before, which is the getaway.
I haven't
right.
been.
Right, and they've done stuff
I've been
there.
invited, but I just
but
didn't.
I don't know. I have no idea. But I'm like, well, they're a St. Louis brewery. I don't know. So if they are, then they're competitors with Perennial and Second Shift. And man, this is just it gets so complicated so quickly, and Brian may not know this, and maybe even the editor doesn't even know this.
Well, and that was one of the defenses of this article. When Kate brought this up, I saw they were going at it in the thread on Twitter, saying
someone
that,
under the name of Good Beer Hunting, I'm assuming Michael Kaiser, that was never really fully made clear.
yeah, was saying, these writers don't know the history of this site. And so, they have no idea that we used to do that. And that just seems like then you're not a very great publication then, if you're not expecting.
Well,
you
yeah,
know.
that's what I said. I was like, well, I mean, I've been in this industry now for 5 years. Not a long time, I mean, but yet still I'm now seen as like old guard, which is crazy to me. And like, I don't know how I feel about that. But for him to say like, well, my editors weren't around during that time, like, I remember. I mean, this wasn't really that long ago. We're talking about a memory of 2 years, 3 years, and like where, I mean, to put so much faith in an editor to publish something who's, not really aware of who he's editing for, or what he's editing for, or if his responsibility is to call this out or that out, is just like. There's just too much confusion, and too much is at stake.
I mean, if you read an article for the New Yorker, you probably know who wrote for them in the 1940s.
Right.
5 years is not a long time to know the history of the site you're writing for, especially when it's the site that's publishing the longest reads on beer. And to me, my biggest problem with this article was that it didn't lead with its strongest examples. It went for a headline that could use the word gangbang, which I hope that was acceptable on Simpsons. But
they made a lot of jokes about that. It's a very funny topic.
But
joke.
that was the first line of the article, and I feel like that was the only reason they led with the Instagram accounts. And instead of getting into the stuff that was really, the thing that really offended me was that the Brewers Association complaint process is so opaque.
Yeah.
Like, that is offensive to me. And if it was an article being published in my newsroom that I work in today, that would have been the lead, because that is a bureaucratic nightmare that prevents progress,
Yep.
And why not go there first, Maybe because a member of the Brewers Association is in the fervent view.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows? I know that there are.
Maybe I need to get in
there
this
certainly
thing.
are. There are a couple BA members in there, because it's been, or used to be anyway, because it's been touted that there are as almost like a selling point to join, because there's exclusive forums where you can have access to these people and stuff like that. So not only are they there, but they probably want to be kept there if they are being used as,
That's really interesting.
bait
I had no idea.
to. I've just noticed that there are pro brewers, and it gets mentioned that there's pro brewers. It had been mentioned that there are members of the BA in there, to the best of my recollection.
Breweries sign up and have paid memberships, like paying out of the brewery's corporate accounts.
I have no idea what this
from what
is.
I've read. And I mean, what is that other than like, it's almost like a mob payoff or something.
Well, that's the thing.
That's
I mean,
how
you
it
could,
feels, and
you
that's how
could-
people are. That's why people are like afraid to.
Is it
to
protection
speak out
money?
against
Are
it.
you paying protection money? I mean, you could see it. I mean, whether you are or not, you can certainly see how someone could put out that argument and want an answer saying like, okay, so if I join the fervent few, do I get a notice so I can take down my boys' account before this comes out, like happened with some breweries that are associated with Good Beer Hunting?
Right, exactly.
I mean, that seems to have happened. I mean, there were ones that were
Seems
mentioned.
to have happened.
Seems to have happened.
Yeah. Okay.
Seems
this
to
isn't
have
something
happened.
that you know that happened.
No smoking gun. Yeah.
No, absolutely smoking gun.
All right.
I saw that Phil Wymore of Perennial asked about certain accounts that had histories with Good Beer Hunting. I looked up those accounts. They had been deleted.
Yeah.
That's
I
all.
mean, there's good articles there.
Yeah.
I like reading it. And so I just wish.
Oh yeah, some of the best.
And
Some of the best.
I've
Yeah.
also seen Kaiser say he doesn't even like the name. Like, why not come up with a new name and make a publication that's like clean, that like doesn't have this
Exactly.
baggage?
And to go back to Chris's point, like, yeah, you don't know, Chris, you don't know whether or not they were given notification because they are paying members of
Well,
the
that's my
Fervent Brew
point.
and
I don't
Kleins.
know.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to.
Oh, sorry.
That's my point, man.
Sorry.
The point is that you don't know because there is an inherent conflict of interest in there. So it does leave questions to the ethics. And so then you have people getting on Twitter being like, no, we did this, we did these fact checks, we did this thing. And then you have all the edits, and then it just gets so crazy where it's like, hey, man, like the idea is good. Like, just maybe do it in a I mean,
Just try to, like,
there's too many
clean-
conflicts of
clean-
interest.
Maybe get the ducks in a row a little bit, or pick what you want to do, or
I think
Like
it's
have a different URL, like then your branding company.
because it is weird. It is kind of like strange to now have it be taking a more journalistic, or to be claiming a more journalistic. I don't know.
Well, I know as of a couple of years ago, Michael Kaiser had said at that point the site wasn't journalism, and that it was almost a strength that they have hard opinions, that they have perspectives, and that's what they're bringing that other people aren't. Everyone has their own unique perspective, but now there's at least one writer who's saying, well, this is journalism. So either, maybe the focus of Good Beer Hunting has changed and now they are journalistic, or maybe it hasn't, or maybe it's somewhere in the middle, which seems to what it
they were
is. It's in the middle.
posting a while ago, like, we're not going to not discuss these hot topics. We're not going to not discuss these issues. Like, we're not going to shy away from these things. Which, okay, sure, yeah, don't.
Cool.
Yeah, go for, like, no one doesn't want you to do this.
Right.
Right. No one is saying shy away from this.
Yeah, or like stick to what you're good at, man. Like
Right.
really nice photos and
Right.
good graphic design.
Right.
But then they need to be more transparent, and this is something that like I got into with them on Twitter or a while ago too. Was just about October. Kind of like if. October does need to be more transparent, which is another affiliate of theirs that Michael was also involved
The
in.
content editor for,
But then
or
it was
something?
kind of like vague about. He's like, well, I don't know these things, and whatever. I am involved, but I'm not involved. Yeah, he. I was saying that there needs to be more transparency there too, because breweries weren't aware. Breweries that do have a desire to not be involved in ABI, even if it is initially funded, ABI potential marketing branches were not aware that they were lending their creative capital to those to that. Also self-described as a publication or a journal, which does lend it some sort of journalistic legitimacy when perhaps the framework is not as so.
Even that, just the website though is cleaner than Good Beer Hunting.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
far as the the sourcing and everything, you know.
And on some articles, not all, but on some, and on some of the emails where they're asking for media requests and stuff, they do disclose. But it is like kind of, you know, rare. And
yeah, and
you
they
don't,
they had a beer festival right in August or something,
I don't know.
in like New York, and a number of
Yeah.
breweries were signed up to go. They had no idea that it was affiliated at all with AB InBev, and they backed out before it happened. Right? Do you know any more about this, Chris? Or-
Basically what you
Yeah.
just said, yeah. And it was a couple brewery owners said, be like, wow, well, if you can get me on this, you can certainly get consumers. Like, I'm the owner of I think it was Beechwood Brewing or
Yeah.
said, you know, if they can catch me or confuse me, they're going to be able to confuse a lot of people in the industry, let alone consumers, and that's probably their intent in some way, is to certainly not make it easy to know what's going on. And, you know, I mean, I think that is the same thing that people get on GBH for as well. It's like, what is this, you know? And it's a shame because I don't know anyone who doesn't respect some of the content on that site.
I mean,
oh,
that's,
absolutely not. Yeah, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
yeah, lack of transparency is the core problem with like AB InBev, like the craft brands that they've bought. The fact that they don't disclose that they're owned by AB InBev
Yeah.
anywhere on their labels, like transparency could do a world of good for so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been something that's kind of been haunting that site for a while. I wonder why it's been.
I wonder
so
why they
difficult.
don't. I mean, yeah, I feel like it could potentially strengthen. I mean, if their goal is purely altruistic and just to bring more people and to really discuss these hot topics and to really open up the industry to women, if that is their goal, they need to separate.
Well, that was specifically stated as the goal. I mean, Good Beer Hunting as Good Beer Hunting, basically said that they want to change the culture. I mean, that's why they're okay with these hard discussions, because the intent. I mean, the intent of the article, according to Good Beer Hunting, was to change the culture.
Yeah, and I hope the culture is changed, but I think it. You know, maybe. I mean, yeah, who knows?
I mean, for
Yeah.
craft beer being described as a revolution, you know, is like
Oh,
what,
come on.
30 years old now, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, if you are actually going to try to like make a different system of breweries that are independently owned, that are like different than the mainstream, you need to be better than every other thing. You know, you need to be more, your ducks need to be more in a row than anyone else. Like you need to be above reproach.
Yeah,
And
and I hope they do it. But
Yeah.
right now, as is, I just feel like it's
Yeah.
kind of
TBD.
TBD.
yeah.
Has been TBD for a bit. All right, we'll do a little side bet. Who's gonna feel the most heat? Who is it? Going to be me, Andrew,
Oh, I'm afraid.
or Kate, or
Yeah.
I think it's a knockout.
It's gonna be Jamie. Yeah,
it's
Jamie
gonna
is.
be Jamie.
Jamie, you brought this all up.
I think.
Should I go back and block Kaiser again?
I'm giving points at this
Well,
point.
the
If
new-
there was a spread, I think I'd be giving points to everybody.
I mean,
But,
yeah. I think in the past, they've kind of like, you know, their approach would be to like lash out at people through social media, people who are dissenting their agreement, and just try to like reinforce their points through a series of kind of convoluted, just beat down tweets or posts.
Which
or,
is its own form of toxic masculinity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. To be a woman and say like, "Hey, yeah, I'm bringing these things up," and then to be immediately met with like, "Hey, good point, but you know, maybe you're completely informed." I'm like, "No, I'm pretty sure I'm completely informed about this specific topic." It's detrimental overall to the industry, and yes, another form of toxic masculinity. Absolutely.
Yep, certainly aggressive and exclusionary, I would say.
Yeah. So I mean, the fact that like.
Not open to discussion sometimes.
I mean, I'm coming here as a representative only of myself saying these things, yeah, it's a little, yeah, we'll see.
yeah. I mean, you were tense. You were nervous.
Turn off
was.
turn off notifications for a few days.
Yeah.
It'll be okay.
Oh, no one tweets at me or no one.
Right.
I post some hilarious stuff. If anyone's curious, you can come on down to my
Yeah, there you go.
Whack Factory.
Yeah, Whack Factory
It's a great name.
at Whack
Don't
Factory.
think about it.
Do we want to? I know we've got other topics,
Yeah, yeah.
but as
Well,
long
I
as
mean-
we're talking about Instagram accounts that could be detrimental to beer, what's your take on don't drink beer? Do you guys follow
Oh,
it?
interesting.
He's in
Yeah.
town. He's in town tonight. He's at
tonight?
Revolution.
Oh, is
doing,
tonight the show?
No,
That's why
I
no
think
one's
the
here.
event is tomorrow, maybe.
Okay.
But there's a barley wine dinner,
Oh, very nice.
and then tomorrow he's doing a little press junket. I think he's coming by my spot. I got to figure out
Crazy.
what I'm going
Trolls
to
on
do.
the main stage. Yeah.
And then I think he's doing good. I think he's doing the Good Beer Hunting podcast
Oh, my
tomorrow as
goodness.
well.
Oh boy.
So that'll be very interesting to hear.
Yeah, I mean,
And,
I
yeah.
find the account very funny, but there are moments when it's like a lot of like dude jokes, and it makes
Yeah.
it does also create a kind of boys club in a way.
yeah,
maybe.
For sure.
absolutely.
I wonder, like Kate, do you have any thoughts on that?
As a woman speaking for all women.
Yeah.
Is time up or is
Yeah. But I don't know. I think it's in that case, like the reason I guess why maybe wasn't included in those conversations was just because it is just him standing alone, being himself, doing these things. And if you don't want to follow this one guy who's essentially trolling the industry, but in doing so creating like potentially measurable spikes in barley wine sales. Like that's
Yeah,
it's something. But yeah, some
he's
of
created
the
a
jokes,
cult.
Yeah,
He's
some
definitely
of,
created a cult.
some of the stuff is like I'm kind of like, oh man, like whatever. But it is satire, and a lot of times he is making fun of people that do exist in the industry, like. Working beer events, not a really fun thing to do as a woman, I'll be honest. And it's not because of the other brewers, it's because of the consumers. So for someone to be then making fun of, or not making fun of, but mocking a certain element of that is sometimes cathartic.
Yeah, I like his the term he coined, the cis alone.
Yeah.
Oh, instead of Cicerone.
Yeah.
I get
The
it.
dude who sits by himself on a couch drinking rare beers.
No, it's awesome, and he's changed over the years as well. When he first started, it was much more aggressive and almost caustic, and now I think he's kind of found his niche, and I kind of like where he's gone. And yeah, it is definitely it is a humor site. I think it can be offensive. I think he pumps out a lot of content, and you're not going to hit on all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I also, in a way, don't think, in some senses, I think he cares very much, and I think he pays a lot of attention to stuff. In other senses, he's got this persona of not giving an F.
There's
So-
some other, quote unquote trolls. I don't even know if they are considered trolls anymore, but there are people who are like really adamant against good beer hunting, like in a mean way as well.
Oh, he's
And
got more troll accounts than like anyone.
it's insane.
I know.
And I can't imagine who those people are because there's so many of them. But like even like, but some of them are productive. Some of them
Right.
do like. There's worst beer blog, and he's I believe he's in LA because he mostly talks about LA brewers, or she.
Golden Road.
Yeah, that's Golden
Or
Road.
they blast
Whatever,
Golden Road.
blast, yeah, whatever it is. Blast Golden Road, and in doing so, they actually do a lot of the disclosure. They do bring up like examples of lack of disclosure of ABI in the industry, and they do bring up conflicts of interest all the time. I mean, one of the recent posts on
Right,
his
yeah.
thing was, I believe Instagram. I don't even know. Who knows? But it was how in the last Read October newsletter, which is sponsored or initially gets startup in capital from ABI, and then through ZX Ventures, which is a private venture capital fund or firm.
Very well put.
Then they were part of the Golden Road acquisition. So you can trace kind of and then they also opened up Read October. So there's a publication and a actual venture capitalist acquisition happening. So for that publication to then be reinforcing the other arm of that, there does seem to be a conflict of interest right there. And even if they say that there's not and there's no communication, it's already corrupt. You can't really unterse that connection. And so I didn't even realize this, but yeah, on the newsletter, Worst Beer blog was the one calling out the fact that they were saying that Meg Gill, the founder and owner of
former
owner of Golden Road, is excellent on this show on Vice, Beerland.
No relation, by the way. Just
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, she's got a TV show on Viceland TV. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were just saying, the Read October was saying, I think the actual newsletter headline was she's an excellent host.
Yeah,
and it's just what? Why would you take
just a
the
glowing
time
softball
to
review.
do that?
Right.
Why would you do that? And I saw that on Worst Beer blog, and so even though he is a troll and a lot of times a little too over the top and caustic, and I think that undermines his actual points. I mean, he is revealing a lot of conflicts of interest.
I actually read the comment thread between Kaiser and the founder of Half Acre on.
I saw that
blog.
as well.
Yeah. He posted the entire thing.
It's funny, Gabriel
4 screens.
and Brian Roth were on this show together 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Ooh.
Right before the article came out. Yeah, which is kind of funny. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I think you were saying about him going back and forth or anything specific about that?
I was just pointing out that he shared information that I used in researching this discussion. So it was he's worthwhile.
He or she or they.
They, yes.
I'm on it's
you can say it.
oct.co and I was just seeing if on the front page it used to be hey, you know who's on the front page right now?
Tell me who.
You guys are.
I am
kind of
really upset to hear about
on
that.
Making Beer with
I've
Run
actually,
the Jewels.
well, it's not us. It's actually Jesse, right,
Yeah.
from Interboro.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to that point, we actually asked to not be mentioned on that publication, and there was a review from a writer on that publication of one of our beers, and we didn't respond and didn't send any, or I didn't in my job, didn't send any photographs, and yet it was still published. So, I mean, that is kind of you can't stop yourself from being mentioned on these things, even though they are maybe not something you want to be affiliated in, which is, I don't know, that's probably fine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I don't think you can stop.
But the main thing I wanted to say was, so whenever I used to remember that they'd have beer reviews or articles, and one of them would always be an ABI thing, right?
It's embedding to kind of
as
legitimize craft beer brands.
Right. So under beer reviews, right here on the front page, there's a couple features, and then they've got beer reviews, and the first one is 10 Barrel Brewing Company. There's only 3 that are on the front page. It's Maine Beer, Bell's Brewery, and 10 Barrel Brewing Co. And one of them is owned by AB. And if you expand it, Jamie showing me if you expand the window, actually there are 4, and that there is Gumball Head from 3 Floyds as well. So there's 4 actually, and one of the 4 is, and the first from left to right is 10 Barrel,
which is owned by ABI.
Yeah, they were acquired by ABI, and this is the sort of thing that Ed is always talking about. Edmar is talking about how this is dangerous because they're essentially stealing credibility from
cultural capital. I believe
cultural
is Ed's
capital. Yes,
phrase.
yes, exactly. Cultural capital from what he would say is legitimately independent breweries, and that's why this stuff can be so dangerous. And then it kind of sucks.
And
then
the they he's referring to is the branches of the ABI organization, which one of them is ZX, which did funnel the money, or not funnel, did initially invest, give startup capital to October. And and they're
One owns it, right?
yeah. No, I can't say for sure if that is.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's.
Oh, okay. So they just they gave startup capital, but they must have, but they have no stake in it. Or?
I mean, they are probably a big stakeholder, but
I would imagine.
I haven't researched
can't,
that.
A project supported by ZX Venture.
Right.
Well, to be honest, I mean, last time this subject came up, and I had tweeted out. I've had like 2 tweets in my life, so this is great that we're talking about both of them. That were, I had tweeted out like, I wonder how many breweries are aware that Read October is affiliated with ABI through ZX Ventures, and immediately then it was Good Beer Hunting, sort of back and forth tweets where it's like, no, this is the case. No, this is the case. No, this is the case. And I'm like, well, you can see how someone who's not as educated as I am, and who knows how educated I am, could be confused by this, and where the pitfalls may lie. And then it was, I said, well, please CC me on your emails, to Condé Nast, and Michael did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's cool.
Yeah.
And
I forget. Yeah.
And it's I remember you guys were going back and forth on Twitter about that sort of thing. Just looking at October, it is the founder and president was previously with ZX Ventures. Previously, before that, Anheuser-Busch InBev. It is supported by ZX Ventures, and it is run by Condé Nast and Good Beer Hunting.
Exactly. Okay. So that's
there's
just a lot of.
There's a lot.
But the
in
same
there.
thing does sort
Yeah.
of happen. That sort of embedding to potentially usurp cultural capital and legitimize certain articles or certain brands does also happen, or could be perceived as happening on Good Beer Hunting as well, in the way that certain articles are paid for, certain ones aren't, and you can't really tell which is which. So therefore, if you're reading an article, then he can say like, no, this is just us, like,
or what's paid for and what's not. What if it's a client or somebody that you want to be a client that you're trying to woo with a really nice looking article, like, look how awesome this is. I can do this for your brand. Imagine if I do this for you full time. This is easy for me. I mean, obviously this is just what people reading this and knowing, could be saying like, well, I don't know. Or obviously if somebody did write an amazing article and it had great graphics and everything like that, I'm like, man, we need kind of a refresh on our stuff. This guy does consulting. He did a great job, and he loves our beer. Why don't we reach out to him? I mean, it's not that hard of a leap to make to see that they would want to keep these things together because one generates money for the other.
A symbiotic relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a symbiotic relationship. I mean, if a lot of people and a lot of industry folks are listening to his podcast, which he has, and then they know that he does this other stuff and they like and respect what he does, then, it makes money for it. But it also corrupts the other thing as well, potentially, if that is the case.
Exactly. Which is unfortunate because, like we were saying, I mean, just to reiterate the point, is because if we are going to be talking about, misogyny, and we are going to be talking about, issues in the misogyny and racism and inclusivity versus exclusivity, like, I don't want those discussions to be
sponsored content.
Yeah, even if they're not sponsored content, they're legitimizing that, which is
right.
I mean, it's not up to me, but I think that there's a better way, and hopefully that when more people write articles that are similar to the ones that Brian wrote, and they're potentially better edited, they will be published in ways that don't delegitimize or legitimize potentially unethical practices in journalism in the industry.
Well, the New York Times most recent article on beer was about brown ales, so
There you
I'm
are.
not
They're
holding out
with it.
too much
they're
hope for
up on
that.
it.
All right, so apparently that they know what's hot in
God, they're
2018.
so failing. That's why they're failing, man.
Yeah.
The failing New York Times.
Yeah, right.
All those brown ales they're talking about.
We've only got
Get on the
a
IPA
few
train.
minutes.
Let me keep talking about this.
Yeah, right. We can finish this discussion. I wanted to thank everyone. I wanted to thank the chat room tonight. You guys were, from what it seems like, we're popping off and giving us some really nice feedback. So thank you for that.
going
We
on in
actually used some of what you guys were talking about. I wanted to thank all my guests: Brian Roth, Kate Branken, and Andrew Gill. And I want to thank you guys, the listeners, as well. If you want to contribute, we have to get back to letters. We haven't done them in a long time. So we're going to do letters next show. Insiders at craftbeertemple.com, 3219 South Morgan Street, Chicago, 60608. If you want to write an actual letter, do it. Write an actual letter.
How
3219
cute.
South Morgan, Chicago, 60608. It's the Co-Prosperity Sphere. Send it to Jamie. Don't send it to Ed. He will lose the letter. That's it, guys. Thank you so much. We will be back next time with more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. So long.
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again, 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 again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again, 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 again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again, again, again,